Okay, so today I'm going to talk about why the South, or the Confederacy, whatever you want to call it, lost the Civil War. The Union, i.e. the North, won the Civil War and the Confederates, the South, lost. This fact is known even to the most historically impaired persons, but why did it happen? First, this essay is going to start off with what is obvious and critical with a very obvious and critical comparison between both sides. Population. The northern states had 22 million people compared to 9 million for the South, which included 3 million slaves whose loyalty was questionable at best. The sheer manpower advantage left a much larger room for error than it did for the South, especially in the Western theater with its huge expanse of land, and its vast distances, which allowed the North to launch multiple offensives at once in very different directions, while the South, with limited manpower, was forced to ration its forces to meet them all. It is worth noting that the Confederacy had most military successes in the Eastern Theater, where it was much more compact. The lesson here is that if the enemy outnumbers you, find the smallest possible spot to engage them, much like the Battle of Thermopylae. Putting it into very simplistic terms, having more troops is a major advantage to have. If you have more than twice your enemy's number, you must achieve twice the kill ratio. If he has 3 times your number, you must inflict 3 times as many losses to win, and so on. If you cannot do this, you will surely lose in the end. Not to mention, a vast amount of those slaves in the South won freedom and a chance to fight against their current former overlords. In the end, almost 180,000 blacks served in the Union Army and Navy in various roles. The next major factor that needs to be addressed is the industrial output. Most historians state that third-generation warfare is won in the factory and not on the battlefield. The South could not keep up with the sheer weight of the North's massive industrial output. The North had 110,000 manufacturing establishments compared to a mere 18,000 for the South, and the North was supplied with over 1 million industrial workers, compared with 100,000 for the South. There were whole states such as Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and New York that outproduced the South by as much as 200% alone. For every rifle made by the Confederates, the Union made over 90. The North had 21,000 miles of railroad compared to 8,000 for the South, which makes the logistical support and troop movement much easier for the North than it was for the South. For example, the Army of Northern Virginia, and indeed all Confederate armies suffered from terrible problems with supplies and logistics, that they were often reduced to foraging from their dead enemies from the Army of the Potomac for things like ammo, food, blankets, clothing, and so on. It is worth noting that the southern states, especially Virginia, Texas, and Tennessee, had militarized warrior societies which produced countless skillful generals and brave soldiers who fought for their respective cause. But the North was industrialized, and when a warrior society goes to war with an industrialized nation, the former loses and the latter wins. Just watch The Last Samurai, or watch the video I made on this particular subject. Another important aspect that cannot be overlooked is the death of Thomas Stonewall Jackson. Stonewall Jackson was probably the best tactician on either side of the war. When it comes to infantry and artillery, only Nathan Bedford Forrest came close, and he was a cavalry officer. His campaign in the Shenandoah Valley was amazing. It was an amazing success. With 6 wins and only 1 loss, despite having no more than 17,000 soldiers against over 60,000. His troops marched over 600 miles in under 50 days. He managed to push the Union out by avoiding what was strong and striking what was weak. He would constantly avoid stronger enemy formations and seek out weaker targets like outposts, small detachments, and divided forces. He hit fast, he hit hard, and he hit often. And he hit where his enemies least expected it. His skill as both a subordinate officer as well as a commander of independent units was remarkable. And more than 150 years later, his battles are still studied at military academies around the world. He finished off his Valley campaign just in time to get back to Richmond and reinforce Lee in the 7 Days battle. Just before going into Maryland with the rest of the Army of Northern Virginia, he managed to capture Harper's Ferry in a matter of days, while inflicting 15,000 losses on his enemy, mostly captured, while losing under 500 men in the process. He was a ruthless commander who believed in no mercy toward the invaders of his beloved Virginia. His efforts at Second Manassas and Chancellorsville were key to the remarkable Confederate victories won there. Losing him was a serious blow to the Confederates' war effort, and many say destroyed the South's chance for victory. As Lee said, Jackson has lost his left arm, I have lost my right. Now we get to the Emancipation Proclamation. European powers, Britain and France obviously, were observing the American Civil War with great interest. They both considered coming to the aid of the outmatched South, but the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared the slaves in unoccupied territory free in slave states that were loyal to the Union, they could still keep their slaves. This prevented the European nations who had already outlawed slavery and took measures to prevent it in other parts of the world from taking part in assisting the Confederates via military force. Now, when the subject of decisive battles comes up, first we shall look at the fall of Vicksburg. This was a battle that took place in the Western Theater of 1863. After a siege which lasted over a month, the Confederate forces under John Pemberton surrendered to the Union forces under Ulysses S. Grant. 29,000 men walked into federal captivity, losing their rifles, artillery, and whatever horses and mules had not been eaten. It was also crippling to the Confederate economy as well as logistics. The South was divided in two by the Mississippi River, and Winfield Scott's Endicott plan was now complete. In Pennsylvania, Robert E. Lee launched his second invasion of the North that ended in the disastrous Battle of Gettysburg. He broke 3 major rules taught to every officer, cadet, midshipman the world over. Do not attack if your opponent outnumbers you, your opponent is dug into a fortified position, your opponent has the high ground. He broke all these rules and paid dearly for it, and so did his army. This resulted in huge losses on both sides, about 23,000 on both sides, as well as a decisive Union victory. The North having more manpower and the ability to replace their losses, and the South did not. And last but not least, the final details must come out. The South stopped fighting because Robert E. Lee told them to. Contrary to popular belief and propaganda, the South's will was not broken by the destruction wrought by the likes of William T. Sherman and Phil Sheridan, nor the hideous losses inflicted by Grant. When Lee surrendered at Appomattox, he had hundreds of thousands of soldiers all over the Confederacy whom would have been willing to carry on as guerrillas. Jefferson Davis was still officially president, but in reality it was Lee who ran things. All he had to do was sign an order and send a telegram, and the Civil War would have gone on for years or even decades more, but he did not do this. He told his soldiers to stop fighting and be good citizens of a united American nation. All of this came to an end when Abe Lincoln was assassinated. Now, the new president, President Johnson, wanted to put Confederate military and political leaders on trial and hang them, but thanks to Ulysses S. Grant and others, this did not come to pass. Afterwards, America was able to unite as one in healing and forgiveness and become the strongest superpower the earth has ever seen, and forgo the long and terrible history of nations who were destroyed by revolution and civil war. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I was reading off the computer screen, so I hope that wasn't too annoying. But anyway, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And if you can, leave a donation. It's for a good cause. Everything is appreciated. Thanks, guys. Till next time.